Hey, Dr. Alex.
Hi, Lisa. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good, good, good. You
Yeah,
feeling all right?
yeah, I'm feeling pretty good
Good.
today. I've had
Good.
these in the last 3 weeks. I've had these sudden onset of extreme nausea.
I know how you were that one day. That's why I'd ask.
Yeah, I spent the majority of this weekend in bed, um,
Mm,
and I think it's all due to this neuropathy. It can cause, some GI side effects.
yeah.
So, but I pray I don't have another one.
Oh, yeah. I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. That's not fun, is it?
Well, the nausea is incapacitating. I can take,
Yeah.
I live through the pain of this neuropathy, but boy, that nausea just stops you in your tracks.
Yeah. I got you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you're taking some time off, eh? Thanksgiving and
I
Christmas.
am. Yeah, I
Good
just
for you.
figure, it's my husband is always off all that time around Christmas too, so
Mhm.
I don't know if we'll go anywhere or anything. Well, I'm sure we'll do like at least some day stuff, but you know, we kicked it around. I don't know what we will and won't do,
Yeah,
but
that's good
it's
though.
just
Kind of
yeah,
centering and taking some time for you.
yeah,
Yeah,
it'll just be nice.
yeah. I
And and I haven't taken any time off in quite a while,
No, I know. Yeah, that's why
um
when I saw your email, I was like, yes, go for it.
well, part of it is I'll look and I'll go, oh, I have this going on and that. And most things I can kind of work ahead and get it all taken care of. It's usually not a problem at all, but still yet, you know, I'm a little OCD
No, I
about
don't know
stuff.
that.
So, it's sometimes I go, oh, it's okay. But
Yeah.
there's not as much going on, especially around Christmas. So
Yeah.
I can get it all done up ahead of time, or at least
Yeah.
there may be some things I, have to miss a few of the meetings or something, but for the most part, I should be able to get everything all taken care of. So
Good.
anyway, I have Grand rounds, we only have like 2 empty spots right now. And I know
Mhm.
Dr. Ty was gonna get something else, and I think Dr. Tiller wasn't she?
Yeah,
So it's just
I
getting
think
those 2
Dr.
dates.
Tiller and Dr. Ty, is he back? Is everything okay with him?
I don't know. I just know he was taking some personal time off, but I have not heard from him or seen him.
Yeah,
And so I kind of assume he may not be back yet.
yeah. I hope he's okay.
Yeah, me too. I know he has, is it 3 little girls or two, 3? So, so hopefully all of his
They're
family and
okay.
everything's
Yeah,
okay.
man, I hate for him to
Yeah.
whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I haven't, and I usually get a couple of emails from Dr. Ty a month, just, something, he'll ask something about grand rounds or something.
Mhm.
And I haven't got anything from him. So either if he's back, he's just playing catch up or he's not back yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to go vote after um, our Zoom this morning. So how long do you think that's going to take me?
Um, where is your polling station near your house?
It is. It's close. It's not far. And it's at a church. But I do remember 4 years ago, I stood in line for like 3.5 hours. However, which is
Oh
a long
my
time for
God.
my small town.
Yeah.
However, that was at the end of the work day. So I thought if I go mid-morning, I don't think
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
know you
horrible.
should be fine if right after grand rounds.
Yeah, that's kind of
I
my thought.
I'd go ahead and do that. I voted before I left on my trip.
Did you?
So I voted by mail, which I tend to always do unless I miss the email from the voting place. Um,
Right.
but I thought, you know what? I don't want to be standing in any line. And so I decided to vote by mail. I had to come,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Susan Reed, she's over in the medical staff, not in the medical
Uh-huh.
staff office, but at the administrative unit
Right.
of the hospital. And Susan was the one that notarized my
Oh.
my ballot. So you've got to put in like who you are. You got to validate that you're a U.S. citizen. La la la. La.
Mhm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have never even thought about that. I did think about the last week going in and doing it early,
Mhm.
and I didn't.
Yeah.
So, I thought, okay, I'll do that. Like I said, mid-morning, I think in my small town should be halfway decent. So
Hmm.
we'll
Yeah.
see.
Very good.
But end of the day, like it was 4 years ago, was not good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember that.
So I will make sure I do not get on any social media today. I will not turn on the TV because I don't want to hear the constant
Yes.
bickering and yeah.
Yes. Truly. Truly.
I remember when I was a kid and I mean even like I guess probably about the time I could start voting, which was and in college, which was probably about the time you came to the United States,
Mhm.
right after, yeah, college and stuff.
Mhm.
People did not talk about politics so much. They could talk and debate, but they didn't sit and put each other down. And it was, people were much more respectful. And there
Civil.
was,
Another.
yes, it was kind of like religion. You didn't talk about religion. If
Mhm.
somebody was a different religion, it was fine. You respected that.
Yeah.
And somewhere times have really changed.
Yeah. It is unfortunate to see.
It is.
It is. But we do have the power as citizens, lowly citizens, to cast our vote. So, having been at the Acropolis, a couple of weeks ago, the Parthenon,
Mhm.
that's the birthplace of democracy.
Mhm.
Oh, it's pretty moving
I bet.
that, and to hear all, we had a guide, and to hear all of the the stories of how they voted, and if there was a tie, they would vote again, and if there was another tie, they would vote again and again and again,
Mm.
until until they figured out who won. So it was really, kind of timely. Everyone was very respectful. I mean, thousands of people going up those steps to the Acropolis,
Yeah.
mainly Americans. Oh, there are other international, nationalities up there, but it was really pretty cool.
It sounds like it.
Hmm.
Well, I wish people could get back to just being nice to each other and
I know.
respectful.
I agree.
But yes, there's just a difference in times. Okay, well,
Mhm.
I've dropped my mouse and I don't know where my phone is, and Heather's not on. So I'm going to go find
Yeah,
my phone
no
and my
worries.
mouse.
No
Okay.
worries.
Hello. I'll be doing the intro today.
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Paborji.
Hi. Just let me know when to start and then I'll unblock my video.
Sounds good. Dr. Fain, oh, there's Dr. Dooley. I was going to ask if Dr. Fainstad was joining separately.
Hi there, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Dooley, Dr. Fainstad, would you all like to check your video and your audio just to make sure we can hear you and see you okay?
Yes.
Great.
Good morning.
Okay, I can see you both well. Now, are you both going to be sharing the PowerPoint at different times, or how are you going to work the PowerPoint?
Just me.
Just you. Perfect. Okay. All right. Well, this is Lisa, and I'm here if you need anything, just let me know. And Dr. Paborji will introduce both of you just in a couple of minutes.
Great, thank you. Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Hello. I'm Dinesh Paborji. I'm a PGY2 family medicine resident. So today's grand rounds. It's on a very historic day, I guess you could say. So I got the honor by Dr. Tiller to introduce our two speakers today. So our two speakers are Tyra Fainstad and Yashika Dooley. So our program is underwritten by Educational Grant through OSU Medical Center, GME, Graduate Medical Education. So the disclosures, statements have been made and signed are on file in the GME office. So Tyra Fainstad is an associate professor of medicine at the University of Colorado, where she's a primary care doctor and a resident clinic director for internal medicine trainees at the Lowry Internal Medicine program. So she has a scholarship interest in learner-centered feedback, assessment bias, and psychologically safe educational environments. She is a certified professional life coach and has co-created and co-directs an online group coaching program for physicians and trainees across the nation called Better Together Physicians Coaching. She's also a practicing life coach for faculty in academia, specializing in imposter syndrome, which I have a lot of, confidence, time management, and relationships. She is a recovering approval addict on a never-ending path to self-awareness, and then her purpose now is to create a space for change through helping learners access inner validation rather than relying on external praise. So for our next speaker, so after completing an undergraduate degree at Howard, Dr. Yashika Dooley earned her medical degree at Harvard Medical School. She then did her obstetrics gynecology residency in the United States Air Force at Wright-Patterson, Miami Valley Combined Residency Program. And then in addition to that, a 3-year fellowship training at Loyola in female pelvic medicine and reconstructive surgery, while earning a master's in clinical research. So she went on to become assistant professor at the Uniformed Service University of the Health Sciences and retired as colonel in the Air Force after 22 years of active duty service in 2022. So Dr. Dooley's passions lie about women's healthcare and training the next generation of physicians and through leaders in medicine, and has dedicated her career to helping recruit and retain women in medicine, redefine their roles as advocates for themselves and their patients. She currently helps doctors who are frustrated with the day-to-day challenges of their jobs feel less stressed, have more control, and be more confident in advocating for themselves. So for our residents, the Cloud CME activity code is 2942. So 2942. So please welcome Dr. Tyra Fainstad and Dr. Yashika Dooley. I'll hand it over to them.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, it just never gets old hearing people describe my approval addiction in real life to me. Good morning, everyone. See if I can successfully complete the share step. Oh my gosh, we're off to an okay start. Okay. I am Tyra Fainstad. I'm so happy to be here with you. I won't say anything more about myself. I just want to say that Yashika and I created this talk sort of in the last couple of years together after Better Together Physician Coaching, which is the coaching program that I run and that Yashika coaches for, is mainly aimed for trainees, so residents and fellows. It's mainly aimed for learners. We do also coach faculty now, and every season, every single cohort of people that come through our program, we go back and we look at what people are bringing for coaching. What are the pain points? You know, we allow people to bring literally anything and everything. We have a framework of a curriculum, but you can bring, you know, a fight with your mother-in-law, you can bring problems that you're having at work, you can bring, I don't know what color shirt to wear on rounds tomorrow, literally anything and everything. And we go back and we look at those asks for coaching, and then we decide based on the number of asks, do we need to add something to our curriculum? Do we need to take something out of our curriculum? And in the last 5 years, one of the major asks that has continued to grow is coaching around bias at work, around microaggressions or macroaggressions, coaching around tricky relationships that have to do with any type of bias under the sun. One that is really growing is the intergenerational bias that's perceived on both ends in a teaching hospital. And so, you know, Gen Z feeling like the older generations are judging them, and really vice versa, in addition to all of the bias that we're sort of used to talking about at work. So we dedicated really one of our months to this topic. And now here we are sharing that with you. I am home on my laptop, and Shika, if you see something in the chat that I don't see, just interrupt me. You are muted if you want to say anything more about yourself other than that lovely introduction.
Good morning and welcome. Thanks for joining us so early. And I am excited for you all just to kind of learn this information. I think that so often, especially as trainees, you already feel like you are under the weight of the world. And it's like, if one more thing happens, I just don't know how I'm going to make it. And so I really want to encourage you all today that you can make it. Hopefully we can give you some information about ways to do that, ways to just continue to feel more empowered in a space that often you feel like you have no power.
Okay, so I'm gonna take just a moment to differentiate coaching from all of the other hats that we wear in medical education. There's a lot. Then we are gonna understand why we would or wouldn't choose the coaching hat among the other hats when we are dealing with bias in the work environment. And then we are going to practice. So we've got 2 real life cases for you of when we might choose the coaching tool to empower our learner. I'm going to show you our coaching tool 101. We're going to use those cases and then we'll share a couple of tips with you at the end. Okay.
So we want to really talk about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And as learners, you probably already feel like, I'm doing that all the time. I'm so uncomfortable. Everything's new, right? But in this particular space, I would just want you to know that you may not walk away feeling like, oh, I completely got it. I know what to do. Okay, I can use all of that. You may be more confused, and that's not a bad thing, because part of what we're going to do is challenge the way that you are thinking and doing things right now, because sometimes the way that we've been doing them hasn't really been working, or it's worked up to a point, right? But for whatever reason, it's not working anymore. But our goal is really for you to walk away with more awareness and just know that some of the magic, or a lot of the magic, is going to happen when you are stepping outside of your comfort zone. So resident mistreatment. We know by national surveys that 45 to 65% of residents report experiencing mistreatment. More women and more racial ethnic minorities see that. 58 or 59% report some kind of gender discrimination. 68% are reporting racial discrimination. And so the data is really, though, likely under capturing the prevalence, especially when there's microaggressions, especially when there are things where people are like, did that really happen? Did I hear that right? Was that me? Was that them? And so we know for sure that it surely doesn't capture all the ways that minority residents are experiencing exclusion.
Okay. I, again, want to offer coaching to all of us as a tool to use in this context. And I want to name that coaching is not the only tool that we have in academic medicine, in the learning environment, in the training environment. There are lots of hats that we all wear. You start wearing these hats as a medical student, and then really as you move through training and as you're moving through your career, we put on more and more hats. And so I want to name the teacher hat that many of us are very familiar with. When we're using our teacher hat, it means we are getting information from one source and offering it to another source, right? It might include giving feedback, making assessments. I really want to name the friend hat, and I want to give you all permission to use it from time to time. Yes, even in the work environment, even in the patient environment. When we are in the friend hat, we are commiserating, supporting, kind of in their corner, no matter what. When you have a friend that is going through something and you are wearing your friend hat, you believe them unconditionally and are on their side. That hat is super important. Many of us are used to wearing the mentor hat. The mentor hat is sort of someone that delivers information from a place of having been there, right? So it's a guided counsel. Let me show you the way. I think I might know the way because I've been that way myself. An evaluator is really a little section of the teacher hat where we are just observing and giving our opinion about someone's skills. The advisor hat is like a little section, I think, of the mentor hat. Perhaps it is mentoring someone through a project or even just offering a piece of advice. The sponsor hat might happen in or outside of the room with someone that you are trying to help. You are advocating for them, marketing them for something that they may or may not be present for. And then I view advocating as just a little tiny sliver of that one. And it's sort of representing someone when they're not in the room. So what is their point of view? You're in their corner even when they're not in that room. All of these hats, and there are more hats that we wear. I think I just want to name how complicated our job is, because many of us went to medical school to become doctors, which isn't even on here. And then these hats just sort of default into us, and they're so important in the learning environment. And these hats, none is more important than the other. I think some of them are modeled for us better. We certainly get a lot of teaching on how to teach. We get some teaching on how to mentor. What we want to offer you today is this awkward new hat that many people feel less comfortable with, just because it's sort of a new phenomenon. And so, unlike the rest of these hats, when we are wearing the coach hat, we actually believe that the coachee has the answers for themselves. So that's the main difference that I see. All of these other hats, we have the answers or the support or an idea of how we think things should go. And we are somehow using the hat to transmit that answer or that help to the person. In the coaching hat, we have an inherent belief that the coachee has their own wisdom, and we are just helping them find that. We're helping them get reacquainted with what they already know. And we do that through deep inquiry, getting really curious, and holding a neutral space. Okay. This is coaching as we define it in Better Together physician coaching. This is variably termed outside in medical education. I hear the term coach thrown around a ton, and very often I think what I think is very good teaching is what a lot of people call coaching. And so I just want to get really clear about what Yashika and I are talking about when we say coach. Okay, Better Together. I include this just so you have an idea of where these cases are coming from and where our expertise is coming from. Better Together Physician Coaching is now a national, in fact, we're working on becoming an international coaching program with a goal to mitigate or improve burnout for physicians and learners. We do this through several offerings. You can get coaching. Again, that's reacquainting your own self with your own wisdom in one of 4 ways. The most foundational way here is on the left. It's through group coaching calls, which is a very vulnerable act of coming up in person, spilling out your heart over Zoom in front of a group that is in that same cohort, and then getting some coaching on that. Those calls are recorded and housed on a private podcast so that the entire cohort of participants can listen. Our participants, like I said, are across the entire nation. And so right now we have about 3,000 residents and fellows from over 60 programs in any one of those calls participating in our fall 2024 cohort. We've got several hundred faculty, several hundred APPs, and a couple hundred medical students. They are all coached in separate arms, so they can't hear each other unless they are on a call where we intentionally put them together. We also have written coaching. You can write in completely anonymously, individual sessions if group coaching feels too vulnerable for you. They get up to 8 per year or 4 per cohort. We run 2 cohorts each year. And then this is all sort of framed on a self-guided asynchronous curriculum, which is 16 weeks long. And like I said, goes over content that our people are bringing us as a need. And so some of those weeks are imposter syndrome or perfectionism, or how to feel your feelings, or how to receive feedback in a way that doesn't crush you. Do a lot on confidence transitions. And our month 2 is really focused on how to show up at work when there's difficult relationships and when there's bias. We've studied it. Gosh, I need to update this slide. We've actually run 5 randomized clinical trials, 2 in residence, a pilot and a national one, which you can see here, that were both published in JAMA Open. The larger one, the resident and fellow one with over 1,000 people across the country, I think we were powered to find a difference here. We had a coaching group, so people were randomized into the intervention, and then we had a waitlist control group, and we pre-post tested everyone on validated indices of well-being, including burnout, self-compassion, moral injury, imposter syndrome, flourishing. And in that pilot, we hit the mark, especially on burnout and in moral injury and imposter syndrome. Once we scaled up to over 1,000 people, we hit the mark in every single outcome that we studied. Every single well-being outcome improved by a large amount. We had an overall reduction in burnout by 4 points. we had a number needed to treat to take someone from scoring positively for burnout to negatively for burnout of just between 9 and 11 people over the 4-month cohort. And so I say all that to say this works. We have now, like I said, mirrored those in faculty, in medical students, 7 med schools across the country, and in a multi-institutional APP trial. We got similar results in all of those. We know that this program works to make people feel better. And so that's mostly just context to tell you why we are here talking with you about the inner workings of your brain, especially in contexts of bias at work. What we're really doing inside Better Together is talking about experiences that hit us hard, experiences that feel raw, experiences that feel stressful. And then we are questioning the thoughts and beliefs that come up because of those. A lot of that comes down to thoughts that are hardwired into our brain, either from stuff that happened to us in the past or from stuff that society has fed us. A lot of those thoughts sound like this. You might recognize some of these if you have a loud inner critic, if you have even a hypertrophied inner critic, which many physicians and trainees do. There is a study in Nature from a long time ago showing we actually have larger areas of the negative self-talk center in our amygdala. And the special brand that comes up for physicians and trainees sounds like this: the only way to succeed is to be harder on myself. That is almost always some iteration of, in order to do well, I have to feel bad. Most of us are functioning with this MO just on repeat in various iterations in our brain. I want to call this out. If you haven't read this article, I highly, highly recommend it. Gosh, it's 3.5 years ago now. It has now spun off into multiple podcasts. I believe they're writing a book. It's a really important article because it elegantly talks about the conflict of really, the misnomer of imposter syndrome. Usually when we talk about a syndrome, that person has the thing, like IBS, they have an irritable bowel. In imposter syndrome, the person is not an imposter. I think it should be renamed self-underappreciation syndrome. But when we talk about it, it sounds like the person who has it is at fault. And this article does a great job of saying, you know what? Of course, women have imposter syndrome. They're getting subliminal messages all of the time from society and culture at large that they don't belong. So it's no wonder that they believe this. This is happening to a greater degree with people who are underrepresented in whatever field they're in. And of course it's happening. We're being told over and over again, explicitly and implicitly, that we don't belong. And so it's only natural to start believing it. What Yashika and I want to bring to you today is that, yes, the culture, society, racism, sexism, all of the various forms of oppression exist, and those should change. It is not your fault if you accidentally or on their purpose started to believe these subliminal messages. That was on purpose. It's a mechanism of control. And in order to have a truly equitable society, those structural things have to change. And also, if we wait for them to change, we probably will be waiting our entire lifetimes to feel better. Also, what I know to be true is that if we wait for them to change, if, like, let's say I had a magic wand and I could make it so that society somehow was perfectly equitable and there was no more structural oppression of any group, even if that was possible, we all still would be left with our same brains. And so those that had been suffering for a long time still have these thoughts here on the left on autopilot. And so they are still feeling terrible, even if and even when society does change. And so we have to do both. We have to do the hard work of changing society, absolutely. And if we forget about what's going on inside everybody's head, those people are at a huge disservice. I just bring that up to name it. Within Better Together, we do hold what we are calling affinity calls. They are themed calls, and they are specifically there for people who belong to a certain intersection or a certain group. So it might be as broad as women in medicine, or it might be as narrow as GLBT Latina women in research. And that intersection is created to hold a safe space for anybody in our program across the country who identifies in that group, and they're hosted by a coach, ideally, that is part of that intersection. We can coach on topics related to that theme. It doesn't have to be, though. On any call, anything is up for grabs.
So this morning, we want to talk specifically about coaching in the DEI space. And kind of like Tyra's already said, right? Part of what we want to talk about is going beyond kind of like, I'm sorry that happened to you, right? Things are going to happen. There are lots of circumstances that occur, but it's like, okay, given all of that, right? Given that we can't always change the other people or the circumstances, how can we help empower you, empower the learner in that situation to can take back control, right? So you're not always going to feel better necessarily about what happened. Our goal is not to make you feel better, but it's like, okay, if this happened and it may happen again, what would I want to do differently? What would I want to say? How would I want to feel? How can I take control? Because oftentimes we know that when you walk away, it's usually our brain saying, man, I wish I would have said that, or man, I wish I would have stood up for myself, or man, I feel like this person got the best of me, or that situation happened again. And I always am in a particular situation. And now, not only did the situation happen that made you feel bad, but now oftentimes we are beating up on ourselves for not showing up in a way that we want to, or feeling like somebody got the best of us. And especially when you are in a situation where you are a learner and people are having to teach you and they want to find out what's in your brain and what you know, if you are having situations where you feel like you have been victimized or you are a victim, it's really easy to draw back. It's really easy to be like, I'm just going to go into my little corner, and it's like a protection mechanism, right? Like, I just want to protect myself. I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want to get hurt again. But when you feel isolated, right, and you isolate yourself, it just amplifies what is already going on. And when you feel alone, you feel disconnected. And especially in a place where you need to show your best self, you need to show people that you are learning, you need to show people that you are engaged, that you know about the patients, and that you need to be a part of the team. It's really the worst situation for you to pull back and go into yourself and not show people that you are learning, but also for you not to be able to get the most out of this experience, because really it affects your ability to learn, it affects your ability to shine, it affects your ability to allow those around you to help you learn and become the best doctor that you can be. And so we really just also let you know that coaching offers a way forward, and it really acknowledges rather than resists the awful circumstances, right? And so there are lots of things that are going to happen, and those are absolutely true, right? So I'm never going to be like, that didn't happen, or you misunderstood, or they meant really well, or maybe you heard them wrong, right? We know, and I really do know, right? Those things happen, right? And whatever their intent was is one thing, but the impact of how you feel, of how that occurred, is really what you walk away with. And so all of that is absolutely true. And my thought for you is, despite all of that, because you are still maybe having to work with those people, you are still going to be interacting with those people, oftentimes for many years, right? When you're working with your juniors and your seniors and your attendings or the nurses or whoever they are, how can we still lead you to feel empowered in any situation and not get burnt out, and not allow everything that's going on around you to change the person and who you are at your core, and for you to shrink up and shrivel and not get everything that you deserve as a learner in that particular situation. So we know that the cure for burnout is not self-care, right? It's all of us really caring for each other, and we absolutely cannot do it alone. We need each other. And what I really want you to know, though, is that it starts with you having to really be able to take care of yourself despite what's going on around you. So we're going to talk about cases. And this first case was a case that I actually coached a learner on in our program. So Intern comes in really upset, and she tells you her senior resident doesn't know her name, despite working with her for many years. And she feels that the resident is constantly making digs and feels like her senior resident is kind of like favoring the other intern that's also on the team. And when asked questions by the senior on rounds, the intern's mind like really goes blank, causing her to further doubt herself, waffle on decisions, and ultimately check out from learning and from the team. So what are your initial reactions when you're thinking about this case? And many of you probably have been maybe in a similar situation where somebody asks you a question, mind goes blank.
Yeah, feel free to put your knee-jerk feeling or your knee-jerk response in the chat, whether you're a learner or an educator. What do you want to do? What hat feels the most comfortable in this situation? Let me tell you, if this is me and it's like, say it's on my team, my most comfortable hat is probably the friend hat. I just want to like wrap my arms around that intern and be in her corner. And perhaps that involves a venting session. Perhaps that involves complaining, perseverating, ruminating. And while those things feel really good in the moment, it hasn't necessarily moved the situation forward. Validation is important. And what we want to talk to you today is what happens after we validate. So we all have been to, microaggression training, I bet by now. We all know that validation, even just bearing witness, is the most important step one. Anyone else have a different hat or the same hat that feels comfortable for them? Feel free to unmute yourself and yell out also. Understand if it is too early for a group Zoom share.
So we have somebody in the chat. Coaching, explore what her expectations are and how she expects to meet those expectations, what she expects of herself in response to others. Yeah.
Oh, Marilyn, are you a coach?
Thank you, Marilyn.
It is rare that I find that coaching is someone's most comfortable hat. Honestly, I've been a professional coach for years and years, and it is not my most comfortable hat. I applaud you.
I know. I would say sometimes my most comfortable hat is kind of stepping into the role of like the advisor and being like, okay, we're going to talk to that senior. We need to make sure that when they're being fair, right? Everybody's here to learn. So I'm going to talk to them and I'm going to make sure that they are, doling out everything evenly, but also I'm going to make sure that they know your name or they know how to say it correctly, right? It's really easy to be like, I'm going to solve the situation. I'll take care of that. Not a problem, right?
Absolutely. And of course it is, because we're doctors. We all want to fix things. We all want to solve the problem. It's what we went to school and training and years and years and years. And that helps us clinically. And it is important. Remember, all the hats are important. Hopefully they're all happening simultaneously, but it misses out on one very important piece of validation and empowerment that we can get with the coach hat, where we are actually not trying to fix anything. So this, I always say, when I went to coaching certification, I had to unlearn everything I learned about being a doctor, which was to help, to fix, to solve, to get to the root of the problem, and to offer my guidance. In coaching, we are not doing any of that. In fact, my thoughts don't matter at all in coaching. My thoughts get in the way. And so oftentimes I want to dump all my thoughts out and look at them and be aware of them. And then I'll move them physically to the side on a piece of paper, because my hats don't matter. Their thoughts, the thoughts of the person you are coaching, are what matters. Okay, I'm going to teach you the Coaching 101 tool that we use. We call it the thought model. And this is how we are going to get to the root of your learner's thoughts. And this is so important because we walk around every day assuming we know what people are thinking. Sometimes it's because they tell us, but even then, they don't necessarily share the deepest secrets in their mind. They don't necessarily share their thoughts in a way that's accurate, because they're trying to get you to believe something about them. And so this is so important to drop into a curious space. And I want to share with you that, this isn't rocket science. This is CBT based, cognitive behavioral therapy, a little bit of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And it's really just basic cognitive science. This is the way our brains work. We have lots of data to show that this is true. I'm sure I learned it in med school, and I'm sure it didn't land. So I want to invite you to take a moment, pretend that you haven't learned this yet, and see if you can have a beginner's mindset to this. So cognitive science tells us that everything in our own personal experience falls into one of 5 categories, only one of which are outside of our own mind. I'm going to call that the circumstance. So the circumstances in our experience are neutral facts that happen outside of our brain. They are stuff that goes on in the world. It is factual. It is 100% true. You can prove it in a court of law. For me, a circumstance that is happening right now in this very instance is that this weekend, we went back to standard time. We gained an hour, daylight savings is over, and the clocks changed, right? I could prove that in a court of law. And I bet when I say that, everybody here is having a slightly different thought about that circumstance, because our brains are meaning-making machines, and we all try to make meaning out of every single piece of data that is happening outside of us. Most of this is happening at a subconscious level, because we have, 60,000 pieces of data thrown at us every day. But some of it's happening up here. And for me, my thought about the time shift is, are you kidding me? Are we still doing this? This is throwing my life into upheaval. I do have 2 small children. In fact, now that I'm sitting here, if it were last week, my kids might still be asleep. But because it's this week, they're awake behind me. I'm actually single parenting today. And so I don't know what's going on out there, but I have all kinds of thoughts about the circumstance of us changing the clock that are not pretty. I can't believe we are still doing this. Let's just stay on daylight savings time. That's my one thought. Maybe some of you are like, I love this. In fact, my colleague taught the model 2 days ago and asked for thoughts on daylight savings time. And the first person raised his hand and said, I get an extra hour. I love daylight savings time ending. Totally different thought than mine. It is our thoughts, not the circumstance. It is our thoughts that cause our feelings, right? And this is actually good news and empowering to remember, because if our feelings were caused by the circumstance, then the circumstance would have to change for us to feel better, right? Daylight savings time has to end for me to feel better. Sometimes we want the circumstances to end. Sometimes we want to feel bad or angry about a circumstance, and that leads to positive action. Sometimes, though, the circumstance is not going to change, like the hours of the clock. And if we ignore that important line of the thought, we are ignoring a lot of our power to choose how we want to feel on purpose. It is your feelings that fuel everything you do and don't do. So I might complain a lot. I'm putting a lot of focus on daylight savings time ending. I'm trying to rally people around me like, yeah, this should be different. I'm focusing on it. I'm like looking at the clock, waiting for my kids to wake up. I wonder what time they'll wake up now. I'm putting so much energy on it that really daylight savings time in my brain is taking up way more space than it deserves. That's my result. It is a summary of everything you do and don't do, of your actions that cause a result for you. So that's the way the model works. And this is going on all of the time in our brains about all of the various circumstances, either consciously or unconsciously. So if we were to take this model and apply it to the case that Yashika gave to us, it might look like this. Now, remember I said the C line is everything that happens outside of us. It's stuff that could be proven in a court of law. It's stuff like the color of your skin, and it's stuff like racism exists, right? So we're gonna turn to this learner and say, yes, you're right, there's racism. There's a dynamic here. It sounds like you're getting daily critical feedback. right? You do not see this happening with your co-intern. Your senior has not used your name for the whole rotation and consistently uses the other intern's name. These are all neutral facts. And by neutral, I don't mean that you should or shouldn't feel a certain way about them. I simply mean that they exist. Those facts are triggering her thought. She's making digs at me, treating me unfairly, and she likes my co-intern more. That thought is causing a feeling, which is helpless. This is really common when we are coaching around bias and microaggressions. And when we feel helpless, just like Shika was saying when we introduced this topic, you fall into self-doubt. You don't help yourself. So she's judging the resident constantly, just like daylight savings time ending is taking up a huge amount of space in my brain. This is taking a huge amount of space in her brain. She's got her negativity bias on, and she's looking for all the instances where she's being treated unfairly. They do exist, let me be clear. But because of that, she's less able to learn. She's paralyzed when asked questions, avoiding conversations with her senior, who is, in theory, her teacher, and really disconnecting from the team and the learning environment, sort of in that put your head down and get through it mode. She's further digging herself into this hole, right? And checking out from learning. She's compounding the pain that already exists, which we're not going to get her out of the pain of racism. We probably don't want to. I don't think any one of us want to put on rose-colored glasses when this situation is made clear to us. What we do want to do is get her out of that compounded pain. So again, racism exists. All the isms exist. Our system should change. And no, it's not the learner's fault that any of this is happening. This is happening to her, not because of her. And I want to acknowledge that we want to put on all those other hats. We want our advisor hat. We want our mentor hat. We want our teacher hat. We want someone to go to her APD. We want someone to be talking to the PD. Perhaps this is a site problem and we want to be talking with the hospital about this. All those hats are important. And here we are in this moment with the learner and her compounded pain. What we're talking about today is what can we do now?
Yeah. So I want to just add to that. So at my last coaching session, somebody asked me, they were like, well, what do you really do? And I said, for me, this is like if my child comes home and says that something happened at school, right? I am going to do multiple things. I'm going to go talk to the teacher. I may talk to the principal. I may talk to the other parent and my child, right? So all of those things are going to happen. But what we're talking about is really in this moment, what am I going to talk to my child about? Because all of those things happen and I'm doing all the things at the same time. I'm talking to the teacher, I'm talking to the principal, I'm looking up the guidelines, check. And my child doesn't really care about all of that because my child is hurt and frustrated, right? And so what we are wanting you to know is when I'm talking to my child, what do I want to talk to my child about? How do I want to empower my child in that moment, right? And so when we're talking about the now what, it is really the power is in naming the bias in the circumstance, right? So I'm going to talk to my child and be like, yes, this happened. Like, let's talk about that. But also, right, what is it that I want my child to walk away from that situation knowing or thinking about themselves or being able to do or knowing, hey, if this happens again, this is what I want you to think about yourself, or this is what I want you to be able to know or to be able to be empowered to say or do differently if you didn't like how you showed up in that situation, right? So I just want to make sure that we really hit on that, because sometimes people are like, well, you're blaming the person and you're making them have to think about it and everybody else is getting off scot-free. And I'm like, no, that's absolutely not happening. All of that stuff is going on at the same time. But if none of those people will change, if nothing ever changes, I want my child to walk away being like, I will never walk away from this situation feeling bad or feeling like it was my fault or feeling like I'm not going to get what I need because I deserve it too, okay? And so sometimes what can happen is when there's a situation, the thoughts that person is thinking can really disempower them. It can cause them to shrink. It can cause them to have more doubt about themselves, even if you don't want to, right? If they hit a trigger point, if they talk about something, or if it touches on an area where you are already a little sensitive, or you are already a little unsure or uncertain. And it's oftentimes can be because you're a learner, right? There are lots of things you don't know. And so now somebody's highlighting, you don't know this, and oh my God, you should know this. And they're really like banging in on you. And you're like, I don't know it. It is my fault. I really should have studied more. I really should have read that. And everybody else read it, and everybody else knows it, right? And so we want you to know that the power is in the permission to not think or perseverate on thoughts like that, because they don't serve you. And even if some of them might be true, even if it is like, I could study more. Yes, and is kind of where we're going, right? What is the other thing that you want to tell yourself, because you want to be able to continue to thrive in that situation? And beating up on yourself is not going to help. So let's talk about the metacognition. So racism exists, the senior didn't know their name, okay? And then the learner, that person is thinking, they're making digs at me, she likes my co-intern more. And then that's causing them to just really feel helpless, right? And so for that person, their actions then, where they were doubting themselves, judging others around them, judging themselves, disconnecting from the rotation, really weren't learning. And now they're avoiding their senior, which is almost impossible to do, right? And so the result for them was that they were compounding the suffering, and they were closing themselves off from learning, but it was also affecting their ability to be seen as thriving on that rotation, because other people are seeing that they're not answering, they're not talking, they're not engaging, right? None of that is helpful. And so the reframe is this, right? So when you are going through and circumstance doesn't change, everything, racism exists, senior didn't know their name, that's all true. It sucks, but it's true, right? But what I am trying to say is, how do you want to show up as your best self? How do you want to lessen your suffering? How do you want to walk away from this situation? How do you want to make sure that you get what you came for this rotation, right? Even though all of that happens. And so then, we're talking, and they're like, they want to get curious. Maybe they want to confront the senior with curiosity about the name, right? I have a difficult name. My name is Yashika. People don't always get it right. And so it's like, okay, I've been working with you for a long time. You didn't get it. Maybe I need to say it a little slower, go over that, whatever it is. I want also that person, they wanted to say yes to opportunities. They wanted to allow failure without judging themselves. They didn't want that situation to make them belittle themselves more or not show up the way that they wanted. And so if they want to have those actions, right, it's like, what do they need to be feeling despite what happened so that they can be able to show up as their best self? And, they're like, I want to feel empowered, right? And so if they want to feel empowered, then it's like, okay, what then are they going to have to maybe think despite whatever the circumstances? And some of the thoughts may be, and every thought may not land with you. And so sometimes we offer thoughts, but also it's like, for this learner, they were like, I can't control that senior. I can't control everybody around them, right? But I can control myself, right? And yes, there is this racism, and maybe I need to be extra nice to myself. Maybe I need to lean into learning. Maybe I need to, despite what goes on, just keep focusing on, I need to get what I need. I need to come out of this knowing all of these core elements. And also, I think it's kind of knowing in the back of their mind that this is, again, not the only thing happening. So it's not like I'm just going to ignore what just happened and I'm going to be thinking new thoughts and I'm going to have new actions despite this person not saying my name right, and racism or whatever, right? Because again, I told you, all of those other things are happening in the background, right? And so it's like, this learner doesn't need to worry about that. We're going to take care of that off to the side. But for this learner, this is the only thing that they need to do, because this is the only thing they really can control, especially in this situation.
Ooh, sorry. Okay, I love this model because it really highlights how we aren't changing the situation, right? We're not taking this learner from she's making digs at me and likes my co-intern more to she loves me and I love her. That's not the reframe. The thought has to be believable. And Shika walked you through a way, we call this a result model, or starting with the result that the learner wants, sort of walking backwards up the model to get at that feeling that will fuel the actions that the learner wants. So we're very focused on the learner instead of the situation. How do you want to feel given that the situation happened? Does anyone have questions?
And there's lots of ways that you can take this, right? This was just the learner's thoughts. And like I said, not every thought's going to land. And those may not always be the actions that you want. And the learner could have been like, you know what? I am really mad. I want to stay mad.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that feeling could fuel her to be like, I'm going to go even harder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to feel empowered. You don't have to have like a good thought, right? It's what thought gets you the result that you want. And it's not always like, I have to feel better about it. And so, sometimes for some people, I want to be mad. I want to like dig in and be like, yes. But the digging in and being mad is more about how that fuels me, that it's going to make me study harder. It's going to make me like, absolutely, nobody's going to stop me kind of idea, right? And so for each person in this situation, it may be different. There's no right or wrong way, but it's like really what lands for you or the learner, what empowers them to get whatever it is that they feel that they need in the moment.
Okay, I think let's fly through this second case so that we have time for our tips.
Yeah.
We just wanted to show you an offering of how this model works in a couple different learners to kind of give it to you as a tool that you might be able to use. So here's another one.
Yeah. So working with the medical student who missed a lot of days of clinic due to illness or personal conflicts, and the school decided that he will need to repeat a month of the second year before moving on to MS3 year due to many absences. And so the student feels that this decision is discriminatory against his medical condition, and the student is asking for your help for preparing to take down the medical school to be able to move forward. And you aren't sure how to help, but you're also worried about the student's clinical skills because you aren't sure that he should move forward. And so the challenge is, can you fill out the model, the CTFAR model, and use a coach approach to create a question to start?
So again, we're going to be putting our teacher hats on and deciding, using our doctor brains, can this student move forward? There's a lot of hats that are helpful here, but right now in this moment, you have a student sitting with you saying, let's take down the med school. And you're wondering, gosh, I wonder if a little coaching might help in this situation, in addition to the other hats. So
and remember,
yeah,
go ahead.
I want to acknowledge, again, perhaps we should have better policies in medical school for people that have illness. Perhaps the med school should change. And here you are in the current circumstance with the student. And so we are going to use a coach approach in that moment. This model might look something like this. The student missed days and needs to repeat a month of second year. The student thinks, oh my gosh, this is so unfair. It's discrimination and it shouldn't be happening. Making the student again feel helpless. The student might spin in confusion, starts judging others, is disconnecting from their rotation, sound familiar, quitting, consider quitting med school, coming to the meetings with their mentorship team angry and yelling without meaning to, right? Again, here the student is compounding his suffering and really closing off to a learning experience. So we just want to show you one more time how we might reframe this. Just like Yashika told us before, we are not changing the circumstance, right? Maybe we're working towards it. Maybe we're going to really explore the illness policy of the med school. But in this moment, the circumstance is the circumstance. And so I might ask the student, gosh, now that I've sort of laid this out for you and we see what your brain is doing for you in this situation, is that still what you want to be happening? What is the result that you'd like for yourself in this situation? So this student looks over here at the left side of the screen and says, gosh, yeah, I wish I could show up as my best self and not compound my suffering. And so the question becomes, okay, what does that look like? What actions would you do or not do if you were your best self? That might be one of the most powerful questions that you have in any situation of bias. What would you do or not do as your best self? I know it feels hard to get there right now, but if you were acting as your best self, how would you want to act? Again, here are some of the things that LIC, sorry, that term is Colorado specific. This was a Colorado medical student, but it's the longitudinal integrated curriculum. It's one of a term for their block. So the student is giving similar actions to our prior resident and really saying like, yeah, that's ideal, but it's not what I'm doing. So how can you help me do those things? And the question then becomes, okay, well, we know that your actions are fueled by your feelings. So just like Shika asked the last resident, what do you need to feel to do those things? Gosh, would be great to feel empowered. And here is so important because I'm not going to take the student from this is so unfair, it's discrimination and it shouldn't be happening to I love that this is happening. This seems totally fair and I'm happy to repeat the rotation, right? In fact, evidence shows if we try to believe a thought that we don't naturally believe, our brain has this like temper tantrum and actually doubles down on the first thought. That is called toxic positivity. If you try to force a thought that you don't fully believe, the ironic opposite happens and you double down on the first thought. So we're not in the business of toxic positivity. We've got to find a thought that the learner believes in this moment. And it might sound like, gosh, do you think everything should be perfectly fair? That's interesting. Like, have you ever come across other things that are unfair in your life? Okay, so we know that unfair things are happening. Some stuff that you can't control. Let's come back to what you can control. Again, oh, this might be discrimination. Notice how I'm focused on the learner here. I don't know that this necessarily is or isn't discrimination, but for the learner, yes, to me, this is discrimination. I'll need to be extra nice to myself and lean into learning if I want to do these actions and get something out of it. So again, we are not trying to solve this problem for the student here. We might be doing that in a different space. In this space, we are trying to help the student get out of their own way. What questions do you have? That was a lot of information. I'll say when I'm in a teaching space, I don't necessarily sit down and write out the CTFAR, but it is so useful to have in your mind because what it helps do is remember that it's all about the thought line. And so all of my questions are going to get at the thought line. In this last one, the thought line was, this is unfair. My one coaching question might be, oh yeah, are you sure that everything should always be fair? Is that even possible? How do you want to show up when things are unfair? So it's focused on the T line, not on the circumstance. It's focused a lot on the thought about the circumstance. Okay. We're going to fly through some tips to help you get at this thought model and help you get into a non-judgmental space. Tip number 0, I put this one in after all of Shika's other excellent tips because I think it's a priming tip. Before you even start a coaching conversation, you've got to make sure that your own thoughts are not a part of that conversation. So I might be having my own thoughts about that learner and their ability to move through medical school, given the absences that they've had. Those don't matter in a coaching conversation. They matter very much in a teaching conversation, in a mentorship conversation, even in an advocacy conversation. They do not matter. In fact, they get in my way in a coaching conversation. So one trick that I do before I enter a coaching conversation, you can't always do this because maybe they're happening on the fly, but if you want to coach someone, I do a free write of all of my thoughts of that person, just so I can see them. And I'll even challenge myself, like, get the ugliest thoughts out there, just so I can see what's going on in my own brain. No need to judge it, but just good to know that they're there and those are not useful. You know, I'll set them to the side. Clean slate, pure curiosity. That is the one thing that coaching certification is helpful with. And if you can't get there, please contact us and we can help you.
And so you want to make sure, like you're talking about trying and check in, right? And oftentimes the first thing I'll tell people, because it can feel very, very threatening to have had a situation happen and now I'm asking questions, right? And so I usually try to like set the stage and be like, I'm not questioning you, I'm not judging you, I'm not questioning the situation, but I'm asking questions to help you be able to reevaluate what happened, how you're thinking about it, and if that's a thought you want to keep, right? So I think you really have to set the stage because you don't want to double down on the trauma. Like everybody's now questioning me. I thought you were supposed to be helping me, and now you're asking me questions too. So I always really set the stage and be like, okay, I'm going to ask you lots of questions, and it might feel kind of threatening, but I'm asking questions not to question what happened, but to like have you be able to explore with more curiosity what you're thinking about the situation. And then just making sure that we are holding a neutral space. And so that's kind of going back to what Tyra talked about in the beginning, is like setting everything aside, because I have lots of thoughts about all of this, right? And I want to make sure that I'm not allowing all of that to cloud my judgment, but really having the learner or the person that you're coaching be able to explore their thoughts. And that's what we say is holding the neutral space, allowing them to think their thoughts.
And then again, we're continuously coming back to this. Guiding the learner to define success for themselves means that you don't know what success is for them. And it's all about that result line. So what do you want the result to be? How would your best self show up? What does that look like? All of those questions are about the result. Again, knowing I don't know what that looks like, you do. And what I care about is getting you to the place that looks like success as defined by you, not me.
And I think one of the biggest things is really finding a believable and empowering thought, right? And so again, you can't control all the events, but it's like, if you can walk away from that situation with a thought that empowers you, and you can have lots of thoughts. And I'm always like, what's the thought that you want to pick? Even if you pick it for a little while, that's going to help you move forward and get the result that you want, especially if the thought that you're carrying right now is not really helping you. But what's believable, right? And it doesn't have to be the best, prettiest, shiniest thought, right? But what thought's going to help you get to that next step? And so last kind of thought is that coaching is often a gateway to educational or mental health resources. And so really, we want to empower the learner, just to really know that you do and you can take control in any situation, especially and even when it feels like I'm the low man on the totem pole, I'm the intern, I have no say, nobody cares, right? But those thoughts aren't very helpful. And it's like, what are the things that you can do and say to help your own mental wellness, especially when you can be in very challenging situations that are going to be ongoing? Like, right, residency is not just going to be a month or a couple of weeks. It's not, you can't grind through. You have to really put yourself in a mental space that you were like, I'm going to come out better despite everything else that's going on.
Yeah, and it's often less stigmatized than other mental health resources. And so a lot of physicians are often the last people to recognize burnout in themselves, or to recognize something more serious in themselves, like depression, or like something that probably really does need some treatment. And so what we found in Better Together is that oftentimes it's easier to join a coaching program. Sometimes they're called executive coaching or skills-based coaching. Thought-based coaching is what we do in Better Together. And sometimes that's where mental health unfolds. And once we're in that space of already non-judgmentally, with curiosity, with compassion, looking at our thoughts, it's much easier to access the other mental health resources that might be helpful. And so I say that to say, coaching is not therapy. We don't do any diagnosis or treatment in the coaching space, but it really can work symbiotically with therapy. A lot of people are doing it at the same time. Therapy is sort of addressing depression and anxiety. Coaching is addressing your thoughts about that diagnosis. So we don't do any treating. I always say, we are doctors, but we are not your doctors here. But we can sure look at your thoughts about yourself, your thoughts about those diagnoses in that space. And coaching can be a great space to start if that feels intimidating. If you have questions, please reach out. I hope we have defined coaching for you a little bit more than you came to this talk with. Hope we talked about how you could use it, understanding when an opportunity to use the coaching hat might show up. We went over that metacognition or thinking about your thinking tool 101 with some cases and ended with our tips. Ooh, what questions do you have? This QR code here takes you to the Better Together website. It's not an evaluation, just if you wanted to see what it looks like on the inside. Ooh, you don't get case 3.
Great, thank you so much. I don't see any questions, but we'll give it a sec. But thank you to Dr. Dooley and Dr. Fainstad. And I appreciate your time in giving us a talk on this topic and kind of getting over our biases and things like that. So I don't see any questions. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.